This is Clifford Brown, American jazz trumpeter, pianist, and composer. Now, if you're looking for a musician that's won DownBeat magazine Critics Poll for New Star of the Year, has also been inducted into the DownBeat Hall of Fame, and is considered one of the top jazz trumpeters of all time, you came to the right place. This video will examine the life and music of Clifford Brown. Clifford Benjamin Brown, born October 30th, 1930, died June 26, 1956, was an American jazz trumpeter, pianist, and composer. He died at the age of 25 in a car crash, leaving behind 4 years worth of recordings. His compositions, Sandu, Joy Spring, and Daahoud, have become jazz standards. Brown won the DownBeat magazine Critics Poll for New Star of the Year in 1954. He was inducted into the DownBeat Hall of Fame in 1972. Brown was born into a musical family in Wilmington, Delaware. His father organized his 4 sons, including Clifford, into a vocal quartet. Around age 10, Brown started playing trumpet at school after becoming fascinated with a shiny trumpet his father owned. At age 13, his father bought him a trumpet and provided him with private lessons. In high school, Brown received lessons from Robert Boise Lowry and played in a jazz group that Lowry organized, making trips to Philadelphia. Brown briefly attended Delaware State University as a math major before he switched to Maryland State College. His trips to Philadelphia grew in frequency after he graduated from high school and entered Delaware State University. He played in the 14-piece jazz-oriented Maryland State Band. In June 1950, he was injured in a car crash after a performance. While in the hospital, he was visited by Dizzy Gillespie, who encouraged him to pursue a career in music. For a time, injuries restricted him to playing the piano. Brown was influenced and encouraged by Fats Navarro. His first recordings were with R&B bandleader Chris Powell. He worked with Art Blakey, Tad Dameron, Lionel Hampton, and J.J. Johnson before forming a band with Max Roach. One of the most notable developments during Brown's period in New York was the formation of Art Blakey's quintet, which would later become called Jazz Messengers. Blakey formed the band with Brown, Lou Donaldson, Horace Silver, and Curly Russell, and recorded the quintet's first album live at the Birdland Jazz Club. During one of the rehearsal sessions, fellow trumpeter Miles Davis listened and joked about Clifford Brown's technical ability to play the trumpet. The live recording session ultimately spanned 2 days, with multiple takes needed on only a couple of the tunes. A week at Club Harlem in May 1952 featured alto saxophonist Charlie Parker and Brown. Brown later noted that Parker was impressed by his playing, saying privately to the young trumpeter, "I don't believe it." Just before the formation of the Clifford Brown Max Roach Quintet, journalist Nat Hendhoff and Brown interviewed for a DownBeat article titled "Clifford Brown, the New Dizzy." Roach's stature had grown as he recorded with a host of other emerging artists, including Bud Powell, Sonny Stitt, Miles Davis, and Thelonious Monk, and co-founded Debut, one of the first artist-owned labels with Charlie Mingus. Having participated in the legendary Jazz at Massey Hall concert of 1953, the drummer had relocated to the Los Angeles area and had replaced Shelly Manne in the popular Lighthouse All-Stars. Roach and Brown formed the joint Clifford Brown Max Roach Quintet in the middle 1950s with tenor saxophonist Harold Land, pianist Richie Powell, and bassist George Morrow, with Rawlings taking Land's place in 1955. Brown was in the LA area from March to August 1954 on the invitation of Roach, who arrived on the West Coast with other well-regarded jazz musicians, including Miles Davis and Charles Mingus. Prior to their first outing, the 1954 Pasadena Auditorium concert, Roach included Brown on the basis that the two would be co-leaders. The band started when Brown and Roach rented a studio in California. With Brown able to play piano and drums in addition to trumpet, the co-leaders could experiment extensively with these instruments in the studio. They settled on the standard bebop quintet of trumpet, saxophone, piano, bass, and drums, with sax, piano, and bass players needed. When first choice tenor player Sonny Stitt chose his own musical direction, the band leader settled on sax player Teddy Edwards, former Count Basie bassist George Morrow, and unconventional pianist Carl Perkins. Though the lineup was short-lived, the group sent shockwaves through the jazz community. As the band was still deciding on its personnel, Brown and Roach met alto player and multi-instrumentalist Eric Dolphy, who had his own apartment where he hosted jam sessions. Among the jam session musicians were future quintet members Harold Land and George Morrow. Bud Powell's brother Richie arrived in the LA area around this time and was recruited as the quintet's pianist. The band accepted recording session offers, and Brown composed several tunes that were adopted by the new quintet. Meanwhile, a larger, fully arranged band was organized for one of the upcoming recording sessions by Jack Montrose of Pacific Coast Jazz Records. The session embraced West Coast cool, with immaculately performed charts. An early session of the Brown-Roach Quintet, Clifford Brown and Max Roach, featured the new lineup performing several of Brown's latest compositions. Samuelson referred to the album as a nice gamut between poplicity and pleasant balladry. Other albums featured the Brown-Roach collaboration, including Brown and Roach Inc. and Study in Brown. Brown also recorded albums outside the quintet, including the Pacific Coast Jazz Sessions and 2 albums with jazz vocalist Dinah Washington. Both were recorded from a jam session setting and featured other jazz trumpeters, including Miles Davis and Clark Terry. Following the Dinah Washington recordings, Brown slowed the pace of his recordings and returned to the East Coast, recording an album with Sarah Vaughan in December 1954. The experiments in bop continued in the 1955 session, Study in Brown, such as use of instrument sounds to mimic the inner city environment in Parisian's Thoroughfare and international flavor in George's Dilemma. Jazz critic Scott referred to the album as premier early hard bop and noted the quintet's unlimited potential. A 1955 live performance by Brown with Billy Root and Ziggy Vines was released on tape in 1973. Following this session, with Blakey temporarily replacing Roach following a car accident, the group toured, visiting Chicago and then Rhode Island for the Newport Jazz Festival. Roach returned for this performance and jam session at Newport. Released in 1956 at Basin Street, the quintet's final official album introduced tenor saxophonist Sonny Rollins. The album was called a hard bop classic and highly recommended. While previous quintet albums included original compositions, this one consisted mainly of jazz standards, although it did include a couple of Richie Powell compositions. I hope you enjoyed this video on one of the best jazz trumpeters of all time, Clifford Brown. Now, if you've got a band or musician you'd like featured on this YouTube channel, pop it in the comments section. I'll make another video. Thanks for dropping by. Rock on.